about our priorities, which are to make sure we're standing up for Canadians who can't find housing, make sure people get access to the health care they need with pharmacare and dental care, make sure we're fighting the climate crisis, acknowledge that working class people need to be able to get around, need to have access to public transit. So how we can invest in making life better for people while we reduce our emissions is something very important for us. Making sure that we fight for Indigenous, justice for Indigenous people is always going to be top of mind. And we're discussing these priorities and how we can move forward in this Parliament to make life better for Canadians. Donc, on a parlé des sujets, des priorités et comment on peut avancer les enjeux pour faire face aux grands enjeux qui touchent les Canadiens et comment on peut améliorer la qualité de vie pour les gens. Donc, on est prêt pour vos questions. I'm ready for any of your questions. On NAFTA, we're going to take a thoughtful approach. We have seen the text. We want to make sure there's a wholesome debate in the House. We want to have the text studied in committee. My focus is this. I want to make sure that we're signing deals that are in the best interest of Canadians, particularly Canadian workers. We were told before that this deal was the best deal ever. And then we said, wait, it looks like the Democrats are working on this. Let's see if they can improve the bill. And it turns out they did improve the bill, improve the agreement. So we're not going to take Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau, or the Liberals at face value. We want to do an exhaustive and extensive review to make sure we are making a decision that's in the best interest of Canadians.
Sur le vote, il y aura un troisième moyen dès le lundi. Alors, est-ce que vous allez voter en sa faveur afin de permettre le débat? Pardon.
Dans quel dossier?
À l'ENA.
À l'ENA. Donc, ce qu'on a dit, c'est avec ce débat, avec cet accord, on veut avoir un débat ouvert. On veut avoir le temps d'étudier le texte dans les comités. C'est tellement important pour nous. La priorité, c'est ça, qu'on a un accord qui est en faveur ou qui va favoriser les gens, les travailleurs et les travailleuses, parce que dans l'avenir, on a vu que les gouvernements conservateurs et libéraux ont signé des accords qui ont favorisé les plus riches, mais pas les travailleurs et travailleuses. Pour moi, ça, c'est la question primordiale et on va faire une étude exhaustive, complète, avant de faire une décision.
C'était sur le vote du voies et moyens dès le lundi, donc vous allez voter pour afin que ça aille de l'avant?
Notre but, c'est de s'assurer qu'on a un débat complet. On ne veut pas accélérer le processus. Ce qu'on veut faire, c'est d'avoir un débat complet.
Mr. Singh, your party has called for a tax on digital companies. Countries that are trying to do that now are being threatened by Donald Trump with high tariffs on cars or wine, depending which country they are. Would this have you rethink it, or what would your opinion be on that?
Well, I believe in fairness, and to me it makes no sense at all that a Canadian company, a local Canadian company would pay taxes, would contribute fairly, but an international foreign company could make money in Canada and not pay any taxes back to the country. That just makes no sense at all. So I believe in creating a level playing field. I don't think it's right to give an advantage or prioritize foreign companies over local companies, and that's why I absolutely believe the companies that are making money in Canada need to be paying their fair share, and so I will absolutely continue to push for that.
What about the threat of tariffs, though? Because he would probably threaten Canada the same way if that became a plan.
I don't think that we should live in fear of Mr. Trump. I don't think we should make decisions based out of fear, particularly when our decisions are the right things to do. Like, how does it make sense that you've got a foreign company making money in Canada, making billions of dollars, but not contributing back to Canadians? That's just wrong. And what we should do is make sure that they are paying their fair share. Working class people are paying their fair share. People are breaking their backs to make ends meet. And then we've got multi-billion-dollar multinational corporations not paying their fair share. That's wrong.
Mais quelque chose de pas clair, par exemple, parce que vous voulez des améliorations à l'ALENA et à l'entente qui va être votée au Parlement, mais vous n'êtes pas capable de nous dire quelles améliorations vous voulez. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez changer spécifiquement?
Donc, ce qu'on a vu en général, pour donner un peu de contexte, c'était le fait qu'on a dit qu'on veut avoir le meilleur accord possible. Et les libéraux ont dit, oui, c'est le meilleur accord. Mais je donne un exemple. Ils ont dit que c'est le meilleur accord et on a dit que non, il y a des problèmes avec la façon de s'assurer que les règlements sont suivis. Et après, on a vu que les démocrates ont amélioré l'accord. Donc, on n'a pas confiance que le Premier ministre Trudeau a fait tout le travail qu'il faut pour s'assurer que cet accord, c'est le meilleur accord. Donc, on veut faire une étude plus spécifique, donc avec ce qu'on dit en anglais, enforceability, avec la façon de s'assurer que tous les règlements sont suivis. On a toujours des inquiétudes et on veut s'assurer qu'il y a vraiment des façons de protéger les travailleurs et travailleuses. Deuxièmement, oui, donc les protections pour les travailleurs et travailleuses et deuxièmement, la protection pour l'environnement. Ce sont les deux enjeux qu'on a vus, des éléments d'amélioration, mais ce n'est pas clair jusqu'à ce moment. Il y a des experts qui ont dit qu'il y a toujours des brèches en matière de protection des travailleurs et travailleuses et en matière de protection de l'environnement. Donc, ce sont des enjeux où on veut faire plus d'études pour s'assurer que c'est le meilleur accord pour les gens, pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes.
Est-ce que c'est la chose prudente à faire juste en relance? Est-ce que c'est la chose prudente à faire? Puisque si on fait des changements, il va falloir renvoyer ça aux États-Unis pour qu'eux autres repartent là-dedans alors qu'ils sont occupés à autre chose.
Pour moi, c'est pas une question d'être efficace, c'est une question de s'assurer qu'on a le meilleur accord. Et c'est notre travail de faire ce travail, de s'assurer qu'on a l'accord qui va favoriser les gens, qui va protéger les travailleurs et notre environnement. Ça, c'est important.
Just in English, what specifically do you need to see in the agreement, or would you like to see changed?
Well, just to give some context, we were told by the Prime Minister Trudeau, and by the Liberal government that this was the best deal ever. And then it turns out it wasn't. It turns out that there were some problems and that the Democrats, luckily, fixed it. And I don't want to take Prime Minister Trudeau's word at face value when it comes to whether or not this deal was the best deal ever, because it wasn't, and it was Democrats that improved it. There's still some ongoing concerns around the changes that have been made to help protect workers and the environment. I'm concerned about the enforceability, and I want to make sure that we do an exhaustive debate, studied in committee to make sure that this is a good deal for Canadians. And that's our job. I want to do a thorough job, and if it turns out that this is something that's going to be in the benefit of Canadians, then we'll proceed in the right manner.
You have seen the text, right?
Yes,
so you
of course.
have looked through it. You have, evaluated. Is there not something specific there if you have a problem or not, of whether we're going to keep this conversation going?
Well, there's two things. One is we were told in the past that this was the best deal, and it turns out it wasn't. So we don't trust that the Prime Minister Trudeau has done.
Because you've seen the text.
So we don't trust that the Prime Minister Trudeau and that the Liberal government has done the job to make sure this trade agreement is in the best interest of Canadians. Now we have the text, and we want to study it. We want to have a debate. That's what Parliament's for. We want to debate the bill. We want to hear if there's any other concerns, and we want to study the bill in committee. Do the work that we would expect of any law that's being brought forward. Any trade deal that's being brought forward should be studied. That's what Parliament is for, and I want to see Parliament do its job. I want to be a part of that discussion to make sure we are making the decision that's in the best interest of Canadians and workers. I'm worried because in the past, trade deals haven't put workers at the heart of the decision. They've certainly benefited multinational corporations and the wealthiest corporations, but often those agreements haven't benefited working people. That's what I'm concerned about. I want to make sure those concerns are addressed. I also want to make sure that the environmental protections that seem to be done are held up to scrutiny and were tested, and when we study them in committee, are actually going to make a difference. Those are the two areas that I'm most concerned about.
Can we talk about the fact that the NDP delayed its convention? Is that to do at all with the financial state of the party? Can you give us a bit of an explanation as to why you won't be facing a leadership review because there is a delayed convention?
Yeah, we decided to push back the convention. It was in the best interest of making sure we're in a good position to run an election. We're in a minority, and we want to make sure that we are able to do a good job as parliamentarians, but also that our party is in good standing and good health, and so we made a decision to push it back a bit.
Does that mean that financially it was not a smart decision to hold the convention now? Like, obviously it's no secret that the party has struggled financially, so is that in any way tethered to the decision to delay the convention?
Well, I'm sure we can have our party officials give you more details, but it was a decision made by the party to make sure that we're in the best position, given that we're in a minority government, given the volatility of minority government. They made a decision, and I stand by their decision.
Vous n'aurez pas à vous soumettre à un vote de confiance.
Je vais avoir un vote de confiance dans la manière normale on va avoir la prochaine conférence. Et maintenant, le parti a décidé de faire avancer un peu la date de cette conférence à cause de le gouvernement minorité et j'appuie la décision du parti.
Mais en mettant ça en 2021, alors qu'il y a beaucoup de chances qu'on se retrouve proche d'une date électorale, est-ce que ça ne fait pas en sorte qu'on ne pourra, les militants ne pourront pas dire qu'ils n'ont pas confiance en vous parce qu'il n'y aura pas le temps de remplacer votre chef par quelqu'un d'autre?
En général, si je peux être honnête, j'ai aucune doute de la confiance du parti dans ma capacité comme chef parce que pendant la campagne, on a montré comment on a géré une campagne en mettant prioritaire ou primordial les gens. Donc, tout ce qu'on a fait, c'est d'avancer les enjeux qui touchent les gens et comment on peut faire face à les grands enjeux, les grandes crises comme la crise environnementale. Donc, j'ai beaucoup de confiance que je vais continuer d'avoir l'appui des gens.
I'd like to ask a little bit about the caucus management issue. If you and your caucus colleagues have had a chat about whipped votes, with NAFTA, for example, when that comes up for vote, will your MPs be free to vote as they please, or is that the sort of issue you would expect all NDP MPs to be voting the same? Have you had some of those discussions with the kinds of issues where MPs will be free to vote the way they want and where they won't be?
Well, when it comes to matters of our party policy and where we stand as a party, you'll see us stand together and united. Where there's a matter that's not related to party policy or our values as New Democrats, there might be times where there's not going to be agreement. But with New Democrats, you can expect that we are all aligned by our values. And when it comes to an issue that speaks to our values, there'll be a solidarity position that we take.
Just so I'm clear on NAFTA.
The Conservatives have sort of indicated they'll likely support the bill. Does that limit your leverage when it comes to this discussion?
Well, my focus isn't on leverage as much as I just want to do a thorough job. I want to make sure that Canadians know that New Democrats are fighting to make sure that they have the best deal possible for workers. Because what we've seen in the past is that hasn't been a priority. It hasn't been the priority of previous Conservative or Liberal governments to make sure that working people are protected, that manufacturing jobs are protected. The heads of companies and the companies themselves seem to have done fine, but working people haven't, and that to me is a problem. And that's why I want to make sure that that is something Canadians know I'm going to fight for and stand up for it, make sure that their jobs and working people are protected and their interests are kept in mind when we make a decision.
But if it's not the best deal for workers, it's not like it can be reopened.
Well, what we're going to do is raise those concerns. We want Canadians to know. We want there to be transparency. Canadians should know what type of deal it is, and an open debate on that bill will let Canadians know what type of deal we're getting into. Our job is to make sure we put people first. And here's an opportunity to do that, to make sure there's a trade deal that's signed that actually is going to help Canadians out. And we want to do our job to make sure there's a debate on it, that there's a study in committee, and that we make a decision that's in the best interest of Canadians. Now, what the Liberals do, it's up to them. But my job is to make sure I raise the concerns and fight for people.
Do you agree with Premier Horgan's decision, I guess, not to apply their UN DRIP legislation to the current situation with the Coastal GasLink? And is not applying that consistent with, you talked about Indigenous justice being a priority for your caucus. Is that decision consistent with your vision of Indigenous justice? Well,
the situation that's happening now in the Wet'suwet'en territories is concerning. There's a lot of complexity to the situation. We've got a number of Indigenous communities, the vast majority, the elected officials, as well as the communities that have come out saying that we want this project. So in terms of Indigenous sovereignty, there is a very clear voice that people want the project. In Wet'suwet'en, there is also a lot of complexity around what the community wants. There's lots of folks that are in favor of the project. There's the hereditary chiefs who've raised their concerns. This is something that has to be decided by the Indigenous community. And I think that they should be supported to have those dialogues, to have that conversation. There seems to be a vast, overwhelming majority of community members in the Wet'suwet'en territory that have expressed their support. But I'm really concerned about one thing. We've seen historically that the RCMP has used force in a way that's been disproportional, particularly when it comes to Indigenous and people of color. This is something that is top of mind for me. I don't want to see a situation where there's violence that's escalating against Indigenous people. This is wrong, and this has happened in the past, and we need to be vigilant that it doesn't happen again, and that's where my focus is.
So should the BC government then reopen consultations with the hereditary chiefs who oppose the project?
I understand there's ongoing conversations and there's ongoing efforts being made. The efforts are made to continue the dialogue with the Wet'suwet'en people, with the elected bands who are in favor, and the community members that seem to be in favor, as well as the hereditary chiefs who are not in favor. That conversation seems to be ongoing, and that's the right thing to do. There needs to be peaceful dialogue, there needs to be conversation, and above all, there cannot be an escalation of violence against Indigenous people.
Should the RCMP enforce the injunction?
I believe that the RCMP should be very careful about how they approach peaceful protesters and ensure that there is not an escalation of violence. We've seen in the past that there's been inappropriate actions taken, and there's been inquiries about this. And we want to make sure that those learnings are applied and that we don't see inappropriate force used against anyone. And particularly, we've seen inappropriate force used against Indigenous people, and that's wrong, and we cannot allow that to happen.
If those things happen, would you support the Coastal GasLink project?
I want to make sure it's clear that my job is to make sure that the police are not using, that's one thing that we can all be clear on. The police should not be using inappropriate force. They should not be applying force to peaceful protesters. That's something that cannot happen, and I will continue to voice my opposition to the inappropriate use of force against peaceful protesters.
Can I just ask you, because it's topical,
Yep.
what's your view of security for Meghan and Harry?
Oh.
I just don't know if we have you on the record, so.
Yeah, no, I was just talking about, Indigenous justice for Indigenous people, and then switch. Yeah, no, it's, I don't. I mean, there'll probably be some decisions made in terms of security risks and what's the safest thing for Canadians in general. With anyone that comes to the country, there'll be an assessment about how to best control, maybe best respond to maybe massive crowds that come for people who are very popular. So the appropriate steps taken for that to make sure community is safe. I'm sure there'll be experts that make an evaluation. I want to hear what their decisions are or what their input and their advice is. In general, though, I want to make sure we make an evaluation before I make a decision around what we should do.
And who should pay for it.
And who should pay for it.
Just going back to is the BC government living up to the spirit of its legislation, which was widely hailed, the UNDRIP legislation, if it's, as Horgan has said, they're going to push through this pipeline over the objections of these hereditary chiefs? Are they living up to the spirit of their own law?
I think that the declaration and reconciliation are all very complex things, and I think we need to have a commitment to do the hard work. What I'm seeing is that there's a commitment to have the conversations. They seem to be ongoing. There seems to be efforts to continue to have dialogue with the hereditary chiefs, and that's the right thing to do. There needs to be dialogue. We need to support that dialogue, and I think the path that we want to walk as a society, as a country, to reconciliation, to justice, to fairness, is a difficult path, but we need to walk it. And I'm committing as a national leader that we need to bring in the declaration federally to make sure that our decisions are also guided by that declaration at the federal level. And it's going to be a tough path to walk down, but it's the right thing to do. Anyone new that hasn't asked a question that wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to go back to a question that you answered in French, where you said that you are confident that you would survive a leadership review. Can you just explain why you're still not going to offer that option to